And there we go. Get to our slideshow. And so, welcome everyone. And I'm super excited to welcome a local photographer this month, Grace Hudson of Captured by Grace. And Grace has her camera in a number of areas, different kinds of photography. So she's going to tell us a bit about her work, about the printing and so on that she does, about your branding, about your studio, and answer absolutely any questions we have. So, Grace, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Honored to be here. So I was really excited when Carol reached out. A little bit about me, which I'll kind of show you. You can go ahead and tab to the next slide, I think.
Yeah. It is right there.
But I took a little bit of a convoluted path to photography, as I feel like most of us do. I started my degrees in special education and elementary education, and I worked in Indiana for a bit and then moved up to Traverse City and fell in love with a fantastic organization called Arts for All of Northern Michigan. If you've heard of it, unfortunately, it is no longer, but I had the privilege of directing that organization for 3 years after I moved here. And we provided arts and culture that was adaptive for individuals with all abilities. And that's how I met Carol, working with what was TBA and now is Northwest. And she's magnetic, as you know. So was really honored when she asked me to share with you guys now that I'm full time photography. So I had done photography on the side since I started teaching, and I was just lucky enough. We all have those people in our life that kind of give us a boost sometimes. And I was lucky enough to teach alongside a woman who also was a photographer on the side. And she was farther along in her journey than I was. And she was taking paid sessions. She wasn't full time or anything, but I really respected her work. And she was the one that said to me, you're good enough. You should do this. And I'd always loved photography. I was that as probably many of you, that annoying person all through, high school and everything, that had a camera or some sort of way to document every moment all the time. And I got to college and my roommate had like 3 cute little posters and my entire side of the wall I covered in photos. I mean, from top to bottom. And I look back and I was like, how did I not see this coming? Clearly it's always been an affinity, but I just always been told, it's not something that you do to make a living. It's a hobby. And so I took another path and followed something else I was passionate about. But I'm just so lucky that she said, no, you're good enough. You should really try this. And she was the one that kind of said, here's, because, when you're getting started, it's like, well, what kind of camera do I buy? And that first step is overwhelming with, where to start and what kind of photography. So she helped me kind of take those first steps. And I did photography on the side for since 2016. And then in 2020, I got pregnant with my first child and was still directing Arts for All, and decided, something's got to give. This was before the world started to end. um, so excuse me, late 2019. And I decided to go full time photography. And then like a month later, the COVID happened and I was pregnant with my first baby, and I was thinking, what in the world have I decided to do? But I'm so grateful that I still took the leap. So I've been full time now since 2020, so a couple years, and I wouldn't go back for the world. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about what I do now. So you can go ahead and tab to the next slide. So this is kind of where we're going tonight. If at any point you have any questions, please raise a hand. I'm happy to answer and make this more of a dialogue. But we'll talk about kind of what I do, my style, a couple secrets that I feel like I have when it comes to the type of work I do, some of my favorite things, photography product wise. I also did bring all of my main gear if anyone is interested in checking out any of the cameras or lenses or anything that I use. You're more than welcome to take a look. And then the studio that I just opened in December, we'll chat a little bit about as well. Go ahead and go to the next one. So my style is something I really had to learn how to describe quickly. When you're selling yourself mainly to people, which is my main clientele, they want to know pretty precisely what you do. So it's something I think everybody should think about. If you haven't before, I would challenge you to do that. But the two ways I've kind of come to describe myself are classic and candid. So when I kind of got into the industry, I saw a lot of interesting things happening in photographers my age who were producing a lot of these really awesome, emotive, candid images, but the couples were kissing in every one. And there comes a time when you don't want to give those photos maybe to your grandparents or to your parents to hang on their fridge, even though they're really they share that emotion. There's a need for those classic portraits that you're going to continue to hand down generation after generation, and that was starting to kind of fall off in some of this new trends with Instagram and all of that. um so classic is something I still really pride myself on being, especially for my wedding couples, my families. What I tell my clients is you're going to get a really even mix of classic and candid. You're going to get plenty of those photos where you look great. You're all looking at the camera, no matter how many takes for us to get it when you have 3 under 3, or, I deal with that all the time. But I'm going to make sure that I do my best to give you those classic heirlooms. And then we're also going to get those candids. So, freezing the in between moments that people don't even know are happening. When I have my photo taken, I have a photographer who I love to work with, and she's really great on that candid side. And especially now that I have two small kids, those little in between moments of my kids grabbing my hands or the way that I hold them when I pick them up, those are more special to me than the ones where we're smiling. But I still want those ones where we're smiling so that I can pass those down and share them on Christmas cards and things like that. So, um, I like to make sure that my clients get a mix of both. Go ahead and next slide.
Where's the next slide?
Maybe. You'll see that picture. A lot of my clients now, I actually just have started telling everyone, if we're shooting at the beach, bring extra clothes, because they often end up in the water at the end. And those are some of my favorite images. I'm sure that's happened to many of you too. So my spectrum that I work with is pretty large, and I always say I have a touch of ADHD, and that definitely goes into my work. But I really like being challenged constantly. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps me entertained. And it keeps me learning. And so I haven't niched down for that reason. I really like working with a variety of clients. I do a lot of weddings and engagements, but I have stopped doing those every weekend, twice a weekend. If you want that, you can do it here. It's a huge wedding market, all the time. The amount of wedding venues, I'm sure you guys have experienced, but it's a pretty easy niche to fall into if you're really looking for it. But I now try to take between 5-10 max of my own weddings per year, and that just keeps me still being able to be creative. But weddings, like everyone says, they do really help pay the bills. There's a lot of sacrifice too when it comes to it. It's a lot of prep work up ahead of time, a lot of communication, a lot of planning. I offer a lot of planning with my wedding packages, because I found that I'd rather be in control of the timeline that day than just show up, and not be able to do a lot of things that I want to do or that my client was expecting because of a timeline that was out of my control. So I offer a lot of planning with my packages. I also offer engagement sessions with most of my packages, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But weddings, they're a lot of work. And then, of course, the full 6 to 10 hour day, depending. You usually have a second shooter that you hire to bring along with you, lots of gear, all that stuff. But they're also a lot of fun if you are in the right mindset. And you get to see a lot of really beautiful places and capture a lot of beautiful things. A main part of my business, what I work with, is kids and families. We live in a fantastic area to get into that market if that's ever something you're interested in. And there are constantly people looking for um, photographers at every price point too. So there's always somewhere to start with that, and plenty of space to grow in it. I would say the majority of families that I work with are not local. They're people that are coming to the area, and I've done a lot of work on my website. So when people are searching Traverse City photographer, I'm going to pop up closer to the top, and that's what a lot of people who are coming to our area will do. They'll schedule photos within their trip. And then a lot of those people will come back. And so I have a lot of return clients that are not even local. And that's a huge compliment to me. But I do get to work with a lot of local families as well. One thing I offer is mini sessions, and that's a great way for people with little kids who have no attention span, and then a lot of local families who aren't spending quite as much routinely as a lot of the tourists who come. Mini sessions are great for my local families as well. I work with a lot of maternity and newborn clients. Those are by far the hardest for a variety of reasons, but also just some of the sweetest moments, as I'm sure you can imagine. And then what I'm moving more towards, and my favorite type is marketing, headshot, and business photography. As a small business owner myself, my husband also owns a small business. It's just something I really relate to, and I really enjoy capturing the story. And it's always different. You're never capturing the same thing. Um, you get to tell people's story in such a real way. And it's usually Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So we love that. I've gotten really lucky to work with some of the wineries around here, and that's a really fun subject to shoot. And then other photographers. So I twofold. I have started a associate team. So I got to the point where I was getting enough inquiries that I couldn't take everything myself and still be a mom and do what I needed to do. Or sometimes it was like the same day and same time, and I was already booked. And it's really hard to leave money on the table when that's coming to you, right? But I didn't want to just, hand it to anyone. And so I kind of waited and waited until I saw some other photographers who I felt like had a similar eye to what I do. And I waited a couple years for this. And now I have two fantastic photographers who associate shoot for me. They have their own businesses. They do a fantastic job on their own. But I kind of found them when they were starting and offered basically like, I will train with me a little bit. They had the eye that I wanted, but I had them make sure to know how I run a session, what I expect of someone who would be shooting under my name. Then I pay them to shoot the session, and then they just give me the memory cards. I edit it in the same style, and my clients have been really, really happy with my associate program. So that's been a really fun thing to explore. I offer it for both weddings and families. And then mentor sessions. This year, I've started mentoring other photographers who are just starting. And it kind of lets me use my background in education, and that's been really fun too. So that's kind of the broad spectrum of what I do. I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any so far, or we can move to the next slide.
So I have a question, Grace.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And you don't have formal training in photography or business or so could you just a minute or two address that because um how did you go like, oh, I can, and then what did you have to do on your own? What's really important for people to know if they think about, geez, maybe I'll start a business?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm really thankful that I had somebody who said you should, because I think
Okay.
that was a big first step for me. But I I think once I got a taste of being my own boss, that freedom was instantly addicting. And so I kind of, and there's a lot of sacrifice. Obviously, anyone who is self-employed or in that realm in any way, there's it's the best of both worlds, but it's you're always working. You're always working. But I think that kind of gave me the drive to say, I will figure out what I need to figure out. But the real thing is the internet. It is all my education has come from
Mm-hmm.
online sources. So I'm happy to share a couple of the photographers that I invested. So I would pay for their, like I took a lighting and location class. I think I took some camera basic classes. But I learned to shoot in manual. So I never used auto on a camera because I needed to figure out how to use a camera, right? And I shoot on mirrorless now, which if you haven't tried a mirrorless camera, take a look at mine. They're really fun. Everything changes as you're changing it in the viewfinder. It's wild if you're haven't tried one yet. But I started on a camera 5D Mark III.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I was changing the settings, it wasn't until I looked back at the photo that I could see what I created. And that was really good because that's how you have to
Right.
learn, right?
Yep.
So I think just the drive of like, if I can figure this out, I can be my own boss. And that just was really
Got it.
addicting, I think. But yeah, please, like, Google is your best friend. And Instagram, I heard you mentioned, I'm trying really hard on Instagram right now. I am not an Instagram guru, and a lot of people my age are, and they're really good at it. And it is a game changer for business if you devote time and can figure it out. And I'm not there yet, but
Mhm.
it's also a really great portal for finding people who you want to learn from. Online education is booming
Mhm.
right now, so there's
Mhm.
tons of free education and tons of paid education as well. And that's kind of how I learned to create a website and do business stuff too.
Mhm.
And I will not say I have that all figured out, but
Right.
I'm getting
Right.
there.
Yeah, social media is a part of the deal. Like
It is.
it isn't just when I get around to it, it's a part of the deal.
I actually just paid for a mentor session of my own again a couple weeks ago with somebody who I've admired for a long time. And um, she said, "You need to show up on social media." And I said, "But I really don't want to. I really hate it." And she was like, "Well, here's the thing. Because if you've noticed in our area, there is just new talent all the time, all the time. And I remember not that long ago when I was the new talent and I felt really excited. And I'm already at the point where I'm like, who is that? Why are they so cheap? They're taking my clients. And it's scary when it's your
Yes.
living, right? So one of my things that I wanted to talk about with her was how do you stay relevant in a market that's constantly flooded with new talent, especially like you said, people are moving here all the time. And it used to be people were moving here and starting. Now it's people are moving here with full-fledged businesses who are competition
Mhm.
immediately. And so, yeah, how do you stand out in that market? And she said, you got to get on social media. And the reason that she said it, I think, was really good. And as photographers, especially if you're working with people as your subjects, in today's day and age, with Instagram being as popular as it is, people want to know you before they book with you. They will follow you online and
Mhm.
know all about who you are as a person as much as you're willing to share, but they're more inclined to book with you because they want to feel comfortable when they show up to work with you. They want to know your face, they want to know your personality a little bit. So the more you can show online, the more likely you are to get those bookings. Um, so that's why I'm working hard on it, but
Gotcha.
it's not comfortable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so these are just some general tips of mine. And again, I work directly with people, so I know that's not necessarily everyone's subject, but these are the four things I would advise you to do if you're thinking about working with people or do work with people. The first one is building trust. And I'm sure many of you um, do this or have experienced this. And it's kind of what I just talked about. But people will look much more relaxed when they trust you. And that is actually the main reason that I started offering engagement sessions to my wedding couples. And it was not a lot of couples at first would ask me, if I don't do the engagement session, can I save any money? And I said, no, it's complimentary because I really want you to do the engagement session. And there's a couple reasons why. And it just builds that trust. So especially for wedding clients, then on their wedding day, it's not the first time they've met me and I'm showing up with two huge cameras and flashes and there's already so much else going on. And all of my couples have given me great feedback that that session that we did, when it was just us and it was simple, was so big for them to just trust me on their wedding day. And that's how I get such great candid images because they're not even thinking about me anymore because
Mhm.
they know what I'm doing and they trust me. They've seen the work I produce already. So especially for something like weddings, trust is really important. But for my clients who I don't necessarily get two times with, so my business clients or my families, I emphasize a lot of communication beforehand. I've invested in a client management system. I use Sprout Studio. There's a lot out there, but Sprout is the one that I use. I have a love hate with it. I will not recommend it 5 stars, but it does what I need it to do. And I've used it for so long that I don't want to transfer all my information to something else. But that I have set up some automated email schedules that from the moment a client books with me, they're getting information sent to their inbox that's relevant to their session. I require the first thing when a client inquires with me, I send back a basic email just sending them the exact pricing. I don't, all my pricing is on my website. I try to be very transparent. I'm not here to play pricing games. It's waste everyone's time, in my opinion. So I try to have all my information out there. I send back an email that directs them exactly to the pricing they're looking at. And then I invite them to schedule a call if that feels good to them. And so I get to have a call with anyone who is interested. And that's where you kind of have to make the small talk, right? And find things that you connect on and instantly start making that person feel like they know you and you want to work with them. But that goes a long way. It really does. And putting some of those things on, if you have a website as well, is a big deal. A lot of people who I talk to on calls will say like, oh, I noticed that you are a mom, or I noticed you had a degree in special education. And, I don't have a huge about me page, but it's there. So if anyone is interested in finding out a little bit about me, I will say, especially moms with young kids, they will have done that because they want to find someone who understands when their kids are having a meltdown in the middle of their session and is not going to be upset about it, is going to be able to roll with it, right? So depending on the type of client you're hiring, they're looking for somebody who can handle what they're bringing happily. So building that trust in a couple ways. Um, During your sessions, keeping clients moving is going to give you a lot of these really candid, emotive images. So I make my clients do a lot of crazy things, and I tell them ahead of time. I say, I'm going to make you do weird things. Just do it. Just trust me. And they always laugh at me. But they do it, and it creates great images. So for example, a lot of my clients, I will have like walk towards me or run towards me. That's a very simple way to get movement in an image. And if you look at an image where you're just telling someone to stand and smile versus walking towards you and smile, the way that their body is going to be captured in that image is very different. You're going to see a huge change in just they'll relax instantly once you kind of give them something to do. Because if you think about it, when you're in front of the camera, you're like, what do I do with my hands? What do I do with my feet? If you're telling them what to do, that takes a huge amount of thought away for them. And so they instantly relax. But I make them do things like hold each other's hands, close their eyes, and go in for a kiss. The only thing that I'm looking for, and I'm telling them to do these crazy things, is for them to laugh and smile. I just have to be a weirdo to get it to happen sometimes because it's not natural to have your picture taken. I do also, and this is me personally, not every client takes me up on this, but sometimes I'll bring their favorite drink, or I'll tell them like, go out to dinner beforehand and get a drink or two. I am not above any way to just come and lighten up a little bit. And I tell my clients too, like, this should be something fun as part of your vacation or as part of your stay. Stay and make it a beach day, or check out this restaurant while you're near our location, so that it doesn't just feel like a chore, which sometimes for families with young kids, it definitely can feel that way. But keeping it moving. And there's a ton of prompts online. If you look for, portrait prompts or engagement prompts, you'll find huge lists of silly things to do to make your clients laugh and keep moving. And it's really fun too. And I didn't put this on there, but to challenge yourself to take a different angle. So my clients are always making fun of me because, and especially I've shot 2 full seasons very pregnant now, and I'll be like laying on my back, shooting up at them, like cheersing over me, or standing over top of them in some precarious way, like while I'm 9 months pregnant, and they're like, what are you doing? But changing your angle will change your image completely. And that's something I've been really challenging myself with lately. But it gives it just a whole new twist. It makes it very artistic. The clients love seeing a different perspective. So just challenge you to change your angle and see what happens. Get to know lights. So that was a game changer for me. I took a lighting and location class. If you're a portrait photographer, Caitlin James is a really great online education. If you heard of her, yeah, she was a teacher as well. She did the same thing I did, and she is nailing the online education realm in every way.
Yeah. A good one of her freebies. Yes.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. Super easy to learn from. So I took her lighting and location class, and it changed everything for me. She has a lot of great rules on light, a great way to look at light. So the main 2 things that I tell starting photographers who are working with portraits with people, if it's a really sunny day, you want to keep the light behind your subject, right? And if it's a really cloudy day, you just want to find where the sun is somewhere behind those clouds and make sure that light is coming onto their face. Keeping those 2 things in mind is going to let you take photos at any time of day. I used to be really intimidated if I wasn't shooting right after sunrise or during golden hour. It was like midday, hot summer. I was like, I don't know, like we can't do that. And a lot of times when you're working with families, you don't have the luxury of early mornings or late nights because kids are kids, right? They have their own schedule. So I have had to really adjust my timing for a lot of families, but becoming unintimidated by those lighting scenarios has changed everything. So those are the 2 basic tips. Again, look into a lighting and location class. It changes everything. But then lately, the past 2 years, I've been reminding myself, don't be afraid to break those rules. Don't be afraid to look for the pockets of light and have your subject face it and make a really, moody, contrasty portrait. And I've been really inspired by, if you haven't followed or checked out Jessie Zevelkink, she's also a local photographer. Um, Fantastic documentary style work, but she finds light that no one else has ever seen. It's incredible. And she's a good friend of mine. She takes all my photos, and she's challenged me to break every rule of light that you've ever thought about. So, and that's been something really fun too, with associates, working with associates who are just starting a business. They don't see the same rules that I have from the education. And not that they're bad rules, right? But they're in my head of, okay, this is how I can make a good portrait every time and make the client happy every time if I follow these things. But I tend to get stuck in that, and I love watching newer photographers who don't even know that those are rules that they can break or are breaking, right? Um, so learn some basics, but don't let them keep you in a box, I guess is my big tip.
And Jesse's last name is spelled like it sounds.
Zevelkink. Yep.
Oh, V. Okay, I
Yes.
have a B.
I think
Zevelkink.
her
Okay.
Instagram is J Zevelkink.
Okay. With a
Oh,
Z. Zev. V.
Zevelkink, I believe.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. And then the last one is locations. We live in a incredible area for photography. We are so spoiled. It's unbelievable. I grew up in the cornfields of southern Michigan, and I took a lot of pictures there, and they all look the same. This is an amazing place to explore new locations. So just get out there if you haven't yet. I have a location guide that I send to my clients now. That's really helpful, especially for people who are visiting here. It's so funny how many people say, I want to get pictures at Sleeping Bear Dunes. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of options there. Which of the hundreds of trailheads do you think you're talking about? And they have no idea. They also think it's in Traverse City. So explaining to them that I do charge for travel out there, at this point, because it got to the point where I was driving out there 3 to 4 times a week.
Mhm.
And for them, it's one day of their vacation. For me, when it's 4 times a week, it's time away from my family. Gas was too much. So I do charge for that now, and nobody's had an issue with that. But giving them a location guide of, here's this trailhead. This is what it looks like. This trailhead, this is what it looks, and what to expect. Like, this is an easy trail. You can wear sandals, or this is a place where if you want to wear heels, would be more appropriate. Building that trust with your clients. Again, it was really helpful. But find great locations. Play with where we live at all times of day and night. And if you have clients like this picture on the bottom, I don't even know if I could get back to that spot. Those clients were like, we're going to take you to our favorite place. And I've seen a couple memes on the internet that are so funny that are like, my mom always told me to not meet strangers in places you don't know. And now I do that for a living. And I'm a big crime junkie. I love true crime. So when I thought about that, I was like, yeah, I'm all the red flags are going up. But trust your clients most of the time when they say they have a favorite spot. And again, building that trust when there's somewhere that they're comfortable with, they love, let them show you, let them bring you to that spot. I always challenge my clients too to think about that, because a lot of times they might feel afraid to offer that suggestion. They want to go with what you're offering. But the first thing I say before I even offer my location guide is, do you have a favorite spot, or do you have a favorite thing to do together? And that always creates the best images, because again, you're building that trust, you're taking their guard down. So yeah.
Done. Done.
Oh, you need the microphone. Sorry.
Yep. I just want to make sure that our friends on Zoom can hear your question.
All right. Anyway, I'm just curious, how much time do you spend scouting out the locations where the wedding's going to be, the altar, where the reception is going to be, and how do you process that into your price?
Great question. When I was starting weddings and I hadn't done as many of them as I have now, I spent a lot of time. I wanted to be really secure in where I was going, knowing where I was going, especially because wedding days are they're so fast. You can't be late. You don't have time to do any of that the day of. So I did spend a lot of time beforehand when I just started. At this point, I'm familiar with most of the venues that I work at, but if it is a new venue, most of the time I will go beforehand and maybe take an hour and just familiarize myself with the location. Especially, like, I had a couple get married at French Valley Vineyards, or their reception was at French Valley Vineyards out in Lake Leelanau. And that is a beautiful barn, but it is dark. I knew it was going to be dark. And so I went ahead of time and wanted to determine what do I need to bring to light this thing? Because it's not just going to be one flash on my camera. There's going to be a lot more that goes into it. So, if especially if it's an area I'm unfamiliar with, I'll go ahead of time. But my pricing, I used to, like I said, I used to make it custom packages after I heard from the couple. I found that took too much of my time to go back and process. Well, this means this and this means this. I have found now that I have 3 packages that I offer, and they choose one of those. And the only thing that varies, it's a 6 hour with no engagement session, an 8 hour with an engagement session. And then I do offer some hourly coverage if there's maybe like an elopement. So I'll offer like 2 hours or 4 hours. And the 6 hour and the 8 hour, I include a second shooter. I do that because of COVID. And we learned that the worst can happen at any time. And I personally value that insurance for my couples. I never want my couple to be without a photographer on their wedding day. Obviously, we're through COVID now, but things like car accident, sickness, like I said, I was very pregnant for 2 years of shooting. So that just comes standard in my package. But the only thing that varies is if they want to add extra time or if it's a travel location, and I just have an hourly travel fee that I'll add on. And then they can always add on an album, like I have samples in the back afterwards or at first, but it's not something I require. And I've just found streamlining that makes my business run better. It's way easier for couples to understand. Seems to be, I've gotten a lot of good feedback from my clients, just not having having it all laid out. Basically, I do still have a Zoom meeting with any couple that is interested, but my price pretty much stays the same. It's a good question. There's some, yeah. So I'm just going to share a couple of things that I use to do what I do. Like I said, I have pretty much everything here. So let me know if you want to look at anything. I shoot very wide open. So pretty much everything I do is going to be 1.4 to 2.8. And that means you got to have your focus on the spot unless you're going for like that new trend, which is out of focus. Not huge on that. I think it has a time and a place. But I like to keep my focus sharp. I like that bokeh in all my images. And so I look for lenses and I shoot pretty wide open most of the time. Obviously, that's going to change when necessary, depending on the lighting scenario or if I'm using some off-camera flash. But in general, that's where my f-stop is going to sit for the most part. Because of that, I'm going to keep my shutter speed around that 200 safe spot. I do up it a lot depending if I'm shooting in full sun or if there's a lot of motion. But I would say, like, when I'm talking to my second shooters or my associates, I kind of have a rule for them of like, you don't go below 200 because I don't want that motion blur. I don't want any camera shake. So around that 200, 250, it's where my shutter speed usually stays. And then I do use both natural light and off-camera flash. For the majority of my career at this point, I was more natural light. That's what I learned. But I've always believed that's very important to learn and understand off-camera flash. It's part of what we do. And it's a very intricate subject to learn, as is every part of photography. And it's very intimidating. And so I would say if that's something you're new to, just start somewhere. Just try, just play. Just same way if you just started learning your camera using manual, just play with the settings and see what happens. It's the best way to at least break the fear down. But there's a lot of great education out there as well. So I use both. I would say my images have a crispness because of this, a shallow depth of field, small focus point. And then like I said, in 2020, I switched to mirrorless. So I use the R6, Canon R6. And then the two lenses I shoot dual almost all the time. So I wear and I'll talk about this, I wear a spider holster, which I have with me. If you want to check it out, it has like 2 little slots. Everybody has a comment when I walk in the room. But I always have my 85 millimeter 1.2, and gives you that really beautiful bokeh, great portraits. And then I always have my 28 to 70, and that's an RF lens. And that all goes down to 2.0. It's a huge lens if you want to see it. I couldn't believe how big it was and how heavy it still was. It like negated the lightness of the R6 mirrorless body, but it's an awesome lens. It's so versatile. Between those two, I rarely change my lens out. Sometimes I'll throw on a macro. I just picked up a wide angle lens. But even before that, I usually just rented it because I used it so sparsely. I have a 50 and a 35 as well that are great, but I really don't pick them up anymore. These are the ones that I've just fallen in love with.
Grace, you mentioned earlier that you never shot in anything but manual to really learn the camera. Is that still true? You don't do autofocus?
Nope. I
Okay.
know a lot of people love aperture priority. I've honestly never been able to figure that out, and it's supposed to be easier. But I think I'm just so,
Yeah.
muscle memory
Right.
with what I've learned
Right.
in manual that
Right.
I could figure it out, but I'm happy with what I
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So
Your vision has to be so good, looking at the back of the camera to make sure your focus is right.
yes, yes. I will say there are times too when I get on the computer, and because I shoot so wide open, I'm like, oh, that was a little off
Yeah.
where I thought it was. Um, but it's never anything that is like, oh, that image is trash.
Okay.
Because of it.
Mhm.
But again, like if you have not shot mirrorless, check out my cameras because
Mhm.
you're seeing what you're changing in your viewfinder. I mean, the first time I did it, I thought it was voodoo.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Okay.
So that helps
I'm
a
gonna
lot.
do that when
Yeah.
we're finished.
Yeah, please do. I trying to think of what I have it on. I have it on autofocus, and there's a million
Oh.
different like types of. I haven't even explored all those. I can't even remember which one I'm using. So with the mirrorless, does anyone shoot with the R6 or mirrorless? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not like telling you things you already know all about. Um, the mirrorless camera, you on the back of the screen, it's a touch screen, so that's something to get used to. You can change everything on there with your hand, but you can change your focal point. So as I'm shooting, I can move my thumb without taking the camera away from my face, and it's kind of like on a like on my Mark III, it was the forgetting the term for it, but you would move your focus, it's called touch and drag now. Move your focus and then reconfigure your image. But now you can do that basically right on your screen without even taking your eye away.
Mm.
It's weird. It's crazy. And I only switched because I had a Mark III die on me in the middle of a wedding. But thankfully, I always shoot with two bodies, and I had a second shooter, so bride never knew. You'll never know in the gallery. But because that happened, I had to upgrade one camera, and it was right when my Mark III was losing value that I just decided to make the full switch. So I'm not even usually like a real techie next new thing person. I just happen to have to make the switch and have been really excited about it. I think that was the last.
Oh yeah, I
backwards.
went the wrong way. So sorry. Yep.
So I thought I'd just share a couple of my favorite like not camera gear things, some accessories. So the spider holster I was telling you about, I really love. I used a harness for a long time, and that really killed my back. And when I got pregnant, I just couldn't even shoot with it. I'm not sure why, just the weight shift I couldn't do. So I found the holster, and that has saved my back a ton, especially through long wedding days. But I really like how, and some people this makes them nervous, but I'm the clumsiest person you'll ever meet. My parents always like joked that they named me Grace for a reason, and I've been okay with the camera not being attached to me because it's great. You can just pull it right off, and then your camera's free in your hand. A lot of people will attach a hand strap to their camera just for some extra stability in case they were to drop it, but I really like just being able to pick it up and put it down. And then it does have a lock on it, so you can lock the where it sits. So if you're like getting out of your car or climbing stairs or something, which on a wedding day you don't always have time to put your cameras back in your camera bag when you're transitioning to the next thing, so you can just lock it, the mechanism, and then your camera will be on you. It won't go anywhere. It can't slide off. So it's pretty great. And they have extra I haven't invested in these yet, but they have extra like bag lens pouches that you can add to the holster itself. So you can really configure your own personal carrying system right on your hips. It's great. Godox lighting would be my recommendation. Does anyone use Godox? Familiar with Godox? Okay. They're really great. I started with, your cheap flashes, like your newer and all that stuff just to get started. And then I actually ended up investing in the Canon flashes, which are pricey. And I was not happy with those for a couple of reasons. And then I heard about Godox, and I don't think I'll ever switch, maybe to Pro Photo someday when I get into more studio stuff. But Godox has been awesome with what they offer. I have their V1s. I have some here you can check out. They're just speed lights on camera, but I actually use them in a lot of my studio work. They're very powerful. They're easy to sync together. They're just a really great lighting company that I've found for people who are teaching themselves. um, and then Magmod products. Does anyone use Magmod stuff? Okay. So when you kind of get into off-camera lighting, there's modifiers that you're going to add to your flashes to change your light, control your light. And Magmod, I'll show you, they have these adapters that go right onto your flash, and they're magnetic. So everything that Magmod makes, all their modifiers, just magnet right on. It's super easy. There's no like clipping, twisting, messing with all that stuff. They're more expensive, but I would say they're far worth it if you're going to get into any on location or studio lighting stuff. And they have everything from just the stuff that will stay right on your camera, staying small, to those big soft boxes, all magnetic. So every level of flash. Fun. Do you have a question? Yeah. So he asked if the Godox flashes I was using were round or oblong, and they are round. Yes.
And everything.
Yes, they actually do have a really great line of modifier stuff.
Yeah. I was just curious. And have you picked up any of their strobes?
No, no, I have the 8200.
All right.
Yes, I have not played with that as much as I should yet, but I do have that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to share with you is after 8 years in business, I opened a photography studio, somewhat unplanned, but I want to get the word out to the community, because not only is it my studio, you can go ahead and tab to the next one. I share it with my brother-in-law, Logan Hudson, who is a local fine artist. He does oil paintings. He's incredibly gifted, so he has a section of it. And then I also share it with another local photographer, one of my associates I mentioned, MHR Photo. Her name is Morgan Raymond, and she shoots there as well. She does more on-site stuff, but she is a studio partner with us. And then we each have our own space, but then we have this about 500 square foot studio space that when we walked in, it was exactly what we were looking for a community studio. So we've got wood floors, white walls. We've got a seamless backdrop. So we've got the main colors, but you could always bring in or request another color or backdrop if you're looking for shooting very studio setting. And then we've got lots of props you can use. We have a full bed in there that can come and go, but like I use that for newborn sessions, something to put the baby on. If people just aren't ready for you to be in their home, or their home isn't quite big enough. I just did a newborn session there on Monday, actually, and it was great. And then I have my smallish lighting kit, but enough for people who are just getting started. Certainly enough to use in our space that is available for rent as well. If you like, when I first started, I wish there was somewhere that just had a place that I could try things and be not judgmental, right? So that's what I'm hoping to provide. We just opened in December. We have an event tomorrow night, actually, a Valentine's event. We're very community oriented as well. So tomorrow night is not necessarily photography based. It's just local artisans and vendors that will be in studio sharing their craft. Just a time to come and experience community vendors and see the studio. We'll be doing things like that pretty much quarterly as well. And then it's also just a private rental event space. So we've hosted things like baby showers, kids' birthday parties. So if you have any need like that, please keep us in mind. Yes. Yep. So it's designed with photographers in mind. And the question was if photographers can rent the studio in Traverse City. And yes, that is our main goal. Rental starts at about $50 an hour. And then the more you book, the more money you save. We have monthly membership programs as well. If it's something you know you're going to want X amount of hours each month, then we would be happy to give you a discount to know that you're going to keep coming back. And that includes all the props. And then I'm working on, right now I have all the lighting kind of divvied out on the booking page of like, if you want to rent this, it's this much, but I'm going to just do a whole lighting package, and basically you'll have access to everything there. So it should be pretty easy to book with whatever you need. Includes the paper as well, the seamless paper, unless you were to like request a color we don't have or a certain backdrop we don't have. Right on Barlow. Good question. So Boone Street and Barlow, we're just south of Boone and Barlow. We're right next to Cherry Bay Dental. If you've ever been to Clay Space TC, we're in the same building. We're just the other half of the building. Yes, and visit them too. They're fantastic.
Okay, and I had a and tomorrow night your event is open to the public.
Open to the public, 5 to 7.
Okay.
It should be very casual. Just we have makers of all kinds. We'll have some hot chocolate and we'll have a Valentine's photo area that you can take your photo at. We'll have like you can pay for a Polaroid and enter a giveaway. We don't have room to have all our gear out to do a full session, but you get the experience kind of what it feels like to be in studio as well.
Cool.
Yeah, please come by and check it out.
Since I have the microphone, I'll
Yeah.
ask another question. Not to conclude things, but thank you because everything, your presentation was really enjoyable to listen to because you're organized.
Oh, good.
And I love that I can see why you're successful combining your business sense with art and your I love in terms of photography, you're beginning with light and you're a people person. So it's been really exciting to listen to. When you went from digital to the mirrorless digital, I was excuse me, been doing some reading today or lately about the mirrorless, and you mentioned the instant feedback. What you see is what you get, if I have that right.
Yeah.
So you definitely see that as one of the benefits of mirrorless.
Huge. When I'm mentoring photographers now, I tell them if you have the choice, don't invest in that right away. I'm very old school in a lot of ways, but I am a big go for the more budget friendly Mark 3 or 4 and learn that first, because that's how you're going to learn manual. That is the one thing I'm interested to see how the mirrorless changes the industry in terms of understanding. And it's probably how everyone felt right when digital took over film. And I'm learning film now. I'm figuring it out just to be noted. And it's awesome. I love it. But yeah, I think the R6 is taking away a lot of the learning factor because you just have to do muscle memory more so. I mean, you could always shoot in auto. I don't see what that gets you, but your fingers are doing all the work and you're not necessarily looking at what settings you're using because you're just seeing it happen right away. So it's interesting.
I love that. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But as a professional, it has been
My last question,
Yeah.
with all the work you're doing, do you do all the processing of the images yourself?
That's a great question. I do. I got to a point where I was very, very burnt out because I was doing like 100 plus portrait sessions and like 15 plus weddings a year while working. that was just too much while running Arts for All. And a couple things changed for me at that point. I invested in a business mentor. That's been a huge thing. Invest in mentors of all kinds. She helped me raise my prices. And that's something that I'm very passionate about as well, is pricing yourself accordingly. Because we all have to start somewhere, right? But it doesn't help our industry and our community of photographers when people undercut the market. So it's really important to price yourself appropriately. And there's a lot of ways to figure out how to do that. But then the third was I looked into outsourcing, what things I could outsource. And I will say I still have room to grow on that. I did try. So now you can outsource people to cull your images for you, to select the ones that you want to deliver to your clients. I never could give that up. That felt like where I really wanted creative freedom, even though I struggle a lot. I overshoot and over deliver. I will tell you, I'm not one to learn from in that realm. But I tried to outsource my editing, and I tried several contractors, several websites, and I just never got the look I wanted. And I would always have to go back and redo what I paid for. So the really cool thing, which we didn't talk about yet, is AI culling and editing, which I was terrified of for a long time. But the culling part was still what I was like, I have to figure something out. Like I shoot so many photos, and it was just, I had to do something. So I looked into a program called Aftershoot. Highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out yet, but they offer culling. That was what I started with, and it learns as you go. So it takes me maybe 5 minutes to put a gallery into Aftershoot and AI cull it. Like a main portrait gallery. A wedding will take maybe 20-30 minutes to call. I will say I'm still very picky, and I will go back and make the changes I want to make, but it does that first round it saves me so much time, and it's fun. It calculates like how much time it saved you, which is terrifying when you look at it, like how much time you could be spending. when you're doing the volume of work I am. So after shoot's great for that. Like I said, you can control how much you want to let it do. And then they just also came out with an editing AI. So I did subscribe to that, and I am still deciding how I feel about it. There is also there's a lot out there, but the top two are Aftershoot and Imagen. Imagen, you pay per image. Aftershoot is a subscription, and I already had the culling part. So what you do with that is you upload, I think it's like a minimum of 3,000 images. So you got to have enough catalogs. I use Lightroom to edit primarily. I don't do a lot of work in Photoshop just because of the volume that I do. So I mainly work in Lightroom. So you have to have a decent amount of catalogs that you're happy with that are ready to import into this AI program. And then it takes a couple hours to go through those and build your profile. And you can always add more to, that's what I need to do, is add more to have it learn more what I'm looking for, because my style changes slightly every now and then. But I will say that I think if you continually update it, it's doing a pretty darn good job. For me, it's not one and done. Some photographers, they put it through and they deliver, but I'm a little bit too much of a control freak that I will go back and I'll still make, like, you know, the small images that it's things that's not going to do, like skin smoothing, taking things out of a photo, that kind of thing. But definitely, if you're interested, it's worth checking out.
I thought I was only going to ask one question.
Okay,
But
happy
yeah, I
to
am
ask.
interested because I shot a lot of people riding horses doing barrel races,
Oh,
and I
okay. Yeah.
ended up with like 1,500 photos.
Yeah.
And I knew I could only process like 20 of them
Right.
to give to somebody, and the rest are just sort of sitting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And it'll go through and it'll tell you, it'll call by like out of focus, closed eyes. It groups duplicates, which is really nice, especially if you're shooting on like digital or mirrorless. You're going to get a lot of those duplicate photos. So it'll group them and then it'll pick what it thinks is the best one. And the thing about Aftershoot I really like is you can click on that image, and then to the right, it will bring up, and I'm happy to show anyone as well if you're interested. It'll bring up everything that's in that similar grouping, and you can easily just tab through and click S to switch. Like, actually, thanks for grouping those, but I did like this one better. And it's a really quick, easy change. But it has grouped all those for you, so you don't have to tab through every single one every time. So it's been a learning process. AI scares the heck out of me. But this tool has been helpful. I will say it has been helpful.
It's fun. I'm glad. I'll age myself. This reminds me of the Dick Clark show. Pat the microphone.
Right.
Where are you from? Yeah. I think I alluded to it, but I love that you mentioned your eye. And so I love how you begin with your vision as a photographer, how you see and what you want to accomplish. And then your equipment and your lighting and location follows suit. So I love that. So thanks for reinforcing that. With editing and so on, what computer do you use or monitor?
Yeah,
Desktop
that's a
or
great
laptop?
question. I was telling them I am not. The art side is what I love. The tech side is what I figure out because I have to. So this past year, I actually did make an upgrade to the MacBook Pro M2 Pro chip. So it's basically the newest, fastest computer that you can buy. But Lightroom. Does anyone use Lightroom? Yes. Okay. So they have some new tools that are also like AI tools. They're really great though. Like okay. So Lightroom, one of the new tools that I have used a couple times is the denoise. Has anyone played with that? Okay. So if you're in a situation where you had to bump your ISO way higher than you ever would want it to be, and your images are noisy and you don't want that feel, you can click this button and it will fix it. It's magic. I don't know how, but it will fix it. I use it only in emergencies, really, but sometimes I'll have, like a group of images, maybe at a wedding or with a newborn session, that they're fine, but knowing I can denoise them with the click of a button, I'll do it, right? That takes a little while because it's like an AI process. And I was using those kind of tools enough that I decided I wanted to make the upgrade to a computer that would do it faster, because I spend so much time editing in the busy season. So for me, and my I've had a lot of tech issues. I don't know if anyone has questions about things that can go wrong. I'm your girl. I had my screen on my very 3-year-old MacBook it just broke. Like the whole thing just it was a $700 replacement. The computer was fine, but the whole screen was just unusable. So I did pay for it on my old one, but I had started looking at replacements at that point, and then I had the bug, and I'd made the upgrade, and I'm very happy with this computer. I don't use any other monitors. I would like to get an external monitor. I have an old iMac at my studio that I would prefer to edit on, but it's just not. It's like an 8 GB RAM, which is just not enough to run the programs I run. But I definitely want to look into just getting an external monitor for easier editing. Your eyes get really tired when you're looking at that blue light all day sometimes. Yeah. And then Carol asked, I have some sample albums in the back. Those are printed through Miller. She said some of you were interested in publishing and printing your photos. Highly recommend Miller's and then White House Custom Color. If you deliver photos to clients at all and you use a gallery system, so for example, I use PixieSet to deliver my images to my clients. Those two, if you create an account, you'll have to create a professional account. It'll want to see like your website or a portfolio or something because it is professionals only. But those will integrate right into a lot of these like main gallery delivery sites. So unless you're designing a custom album, which their programs for that are great, your clients can actually go and directly order their own photos through the site that you give them, and you don't have to spend time doing that. And I started with some in-person sales, but I found I made more mistakes that way because wires got crossed. And it took so much longer. And I've had really great feedback about how easy it is for my clients to just order their own photos, like any online shopping. You know, it's just kind of adapted to that. If you design albums too, oh my gosh, I have to smart albums. Look into smart albums. It makes album design so easy.
Kevin, are there any questions in the chat? Okay. Anybody else
question.
have some questions? Oh, wait, did I
have
hear
one.
somebody? Okay,
Yeah.
yes. Daniel.
Hey, Grace, great presentation. You really had some excellent tips. I had a few questions that are all kind of related.
Yeah.
Do you target the luxury market in your photography business? And if so, how important is that in terms of, in terms of making a living as a full-time photographer and really making it worth your while? And also, what role does printing play in the packages that you sell to your clients?
Super great questions. One, maybe unintentionally, I market luxury. I am not a luxury person. I live in a foreclosure that we're renovating as we live in it. Like I feel like I can't truly market myself as luxury because I'm a very casual person. And I like it that way. But a lot of my clients are more luxury. I think your work, speaks for yourself. If you're producing luxury work, that's a whole nother thing, right? So I think the words that I utilize, and I have found if you're trying to get to the top of your market and you're working with clients, putting time into your SEO and your website is going to make a huge difference. I went from like not ranking on Google at all to being on the first page after just spending a winter working on my website. And I think the words that I use that really help are like top Traverse City photographer. So utilizing, I don't know if you're in Traverse City, but utilizing like your geographic location in some of your search terms, and using the words that you want to be searched by. So I use authentic, I think is one of my words because I relate to that word much more than luxury. But I do get a lot of higher end clients, especially with weddings. And I will say I'm priced higher in the market. And that has helped. When I raise my prices, I think my bookings just went up. And it's weird how that happens, but that's so for example, I'll be very transparent. It's on my website. My hour session is $850 for a portrait session. And that includes, so I went through a lot of stages. This will kind of answer your second question. A lot of stages when I started photography of how do you create packages? How are prints incorporated into that? Because I really wanted for a long time to be able to give my clients something physical. But I kept over and over and over again, it's just not what my clients are wanting. It's just not. And so I had to adapt to that. I tried for a long time, like, oh, you get 10 images and then you can buy the rest that you want. I just found either they forgot to tell me what images they wanted, and like and I get it now. I'm a mom of 2 young kids. Like, life gets crazy. All you can think about is getting to your session and then getting your images. Like, you add anything else into that and it's probably not going to happen. So I've had really good success with saying, and this is a personal choice, but I deliver all the images. You can see examples of client galleries on my website if you're curious about what this looks like. All of my client galleries right now are, unless they've requested that they're private, they're available for people to check out. I use that a lot when I'm booking clients as hey, this is exactly what you're going to get. They get usually 70 to 100 images are what I cull down to. I edit them all. And they get the full gallery. They get to, I know. Hey, remember AI editing? It helps a lot. And like I said, I'm not doing full Photoshop retouches on every photo. That is not my style. Some photographers it is, they're going to deliver less, right? Because that's a whole nother world of work. I've created a preset that I like on most of my images. I'll tweak it. Obviously, it's not going to be the same for each gallery. I'll do some skin smoothing. It depends on the type, but I will edit all those images I deliver. And again, this is a lot of work. I'm not saying it's the best way, but it's what I found has worked for my clients and I. And I will deliver those. They have full printing rights. I will tell them they can download the high resolution photos and they can print them wherever they see fit. However, I use Pixie-Set, and so integrated into Pixie-Set is a print store. And I say, if you choose to print through there, those are the only images I can guarantee color and quality. They'll ship right to your door and they're pretty price competitive, but it is a professionals only lab. So they're going to be the highest quality. I get a lot of print sales out of the blue. I mean, that's where I leave it with prints. I say, if you need any other help, I'm here. I'm more than happy. I use a software, the Swift Galleries. If any of you do in-person sales, you might have heard of Swift. I offer that to my clients if they're looking at like purchasing wall art, and that's just another tool that I can take a picture of their wall in their home, and if they give me some dimensions, we can play with different groupings and sizing so I can really help them and give them a tailored experience to a print service. But it is not something I require. I just found that it interrupted workflow a lot and not enough people took advantage of it, or people didn't book me because of it, because they just wanted the digital images. So it came time where this is my living, right? So I want to provide something that's going to be bookable. And it's been great, honestly. Like it's cut down my workflow a lot after the session. And then it's just a nice surprise when a print order comes in. I will say I am looking into switching to pick time. It's a huge transition. But if you're somebody who's doing similar work to what I am, I have heard from several photographers that pick time increases their print sales 5 times by doing nothing, because pick time has integrated marketing emails that they just shoot out to any client who has a gallery under you. And I've gotten my photo, worked with photographers who use PickTime. And so I've gotten those marketing photos, and I will say they're great. They send reminders a couple times a year. They send sales, and you as a photographer who's utilizing that, all you have to do is opt in. So it's a great way if you want to drive up print sales without having to do much of anything. Check out PickTime. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It was a quick follow-up question, just to clarify. So do you essentially, you alluded to calling the photos. So are you picking out the final photos that you deliver to the clients, or do you show them and let them choose any?
Nope. I deliver everything, and I don't do any proofing. I choose them all and I deliver them fully edited. Yep. I found that that's just what works best for me.
Right. So that like essentially kind of just streamlines and makes the process easier for you.
Yep. And them too. And again, like now that I'm a mom, again, that has changed so much for me, is just the little time that I have as a client. I don't want to have 6 more stops with you before I get my final product. I just want my final product, and I want it to be exactly what I want it to be. So that seems to be the same thing my clients want. And that is, I will say, my clients continually come back to me even before they get their gallery, but even like after the session, they'll say, thank you for making that so easy. And that's something that I always want my clients to feel, is this should be easy and this should be fun. This should not be something that is like a full 6-month process for me. Now, some photographers that is, and you're getting beautiful wall art, so I don't want to diminish that at all. But for me, that's just not what I'm providing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Any questions here in the room left? And any questions out in Zoom land? All right, Grace, this has really, really been fabulous.
Good.
Thank you
much for having me.
so much.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Yep. And so I've taken a quick look at your books and I saw you bring in your equipment. I'm sorry for those of you on Zoom who aren't going to be able to take a few minutes and take a look at it, but thank you all for coming. Grace, thanks for having it here for us to look at.
Sure.
And we'll sign off now, Zoom friends, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you guys. Does anyone want to look at? Okay. And I'll pull up after she